is Jean Rio calling from the Marine Mammal Conservation Program. I got word that you would be showing that Greenpeace film on factory trawlers this week, and I wondered what time it might be coming on. Could you call me at 228-9556? Thank you.
The notion that our sea's bounty is infinite, that our oceans have an endless capacity for abuse, is rooted in our culture. But this American dream is a myth. Today, overfishing and wasteful practices are destroying U.S. fisheries. In fact, more than 40% of regulated U.S. stocks are overfished.
I'm out on the ocean and I see a lot less life in a lot of areas than I did 10 or 15 years ago.
New technology and bad policy are damaging marine ecosystems in ways that threaten coastal villages as well as U.S. jobs. After hunting whales almost to extinction, whaling companies shifted their sights to the fishing industry. Instead of hauling harpooned whales up the back of their ships, they built fishing factories at sea with huge trawl nets. Catching fish from the stern also allowed trawlers to bring in more fish than ever before. Foreign factory trawlers first moved into the waters off of eastern Canada and New England in the mid-1950s. Their destination, the legendary fishing grounds of the Grand Banks and Georges Bank. Their sheer size and fishing power enabled these ships to take record amounts of fish. During the 1960s and into the 70s, foreign factory trawlers overfished many stocks, driving some to the point of commercial collapse.
I remember guys coming back and reporting that they just saw factory vessels from, said it looked like a World War II convoy, literally from horizon to horizon. And there's no doubt that they did a tremendous job on the depletion of Georges Bank.
They didn't overfish us, they vacuum cleaned us.
Congress responded to this overfishing crisis along U.S. coastlines in 1976. They passed the Magnuson Fishery Conservation and Management Act, a milestone in fishery history that survives as America's primary fisheries law.
It had three purposes. First, it was to force the foreign fishing fleets out of U.S. waters. Second was to industrialize the U.S. fleet, to put it on a level playing field with their foreign counterparts. And third, it was to set up a council system to manage and conserve the stocks.
Little did I know, along with Magnuson, was going to come all the other incentives to get people into the fishing industry. At that point, I feel that the fish needed a break. We didn't need any more government intervention, but it was our last frontier.
But the only frontier still big enough to support a new U.S. factory fleet was in distant Alaska. In the 1980s, the pursuit of what has become America's largest fishery, pollock, prompted a gold rush-style race to Alaskan waters. That's when foreign investors and the U.S. government really sank their hooks into the factory trawler business.
Unfortunately, I think they kind of made a mistake when they just rolled over this large industrial-based fishing effort from the foreigners into American hands. I mean, we've got the same problem.
No one realized that America's biggest boat-building boom in fishing history was underway. Before 1980, there was no U.S. fleet. But by 1992, the number of factory trawlers has swelled to 60. The cost to build each ship, as much as $40 million.
The Commerce Department and the U.S. government subsidized the factory trawlers with guaranteed loans. That's how they got started.
It took millions in these government loan guarantees and foreign investments to float this venture. Without investments totaling $1.6 billion, few trawlers would have been built, much less launched. Massive loans and bottom lines soon took priority over preserving fisheries. The government's approach has now endangered U.S. fish stocks and entire marine ecosystems.
It looks to me like they've been operating to make the factory trawlers a successful business enterprise, more than an acceptable fishery that goes along with sustainable biological principles.
Today, factory trawlers are among the world's largest fishing vessels, catching everything in their path. Crews then process the fish continuously on board.
I mean, these are nets where you could fit 747s in the opening.
Factory trawlers waste more fish than any other fishing ships in Alaskan waters. In 1994, they discarded more than 500 million pounds of ground fish, salmon, halibut, and crab.
The amount of waste in the factory trawl fisheries off the coast of Alaska are unconscionable. These fisheries should not be allowed to continue.
Catching and discarding unwanted fish, or bycatch, is one of the biggest threats to the future of our fisheries. It contributes to overfishing, wasting fish that never reach our dinner tables.
There's just such a great deal of difference between trolling, small family-type operations done with hook and line that are highly regulated, and trawling, which is corporate-driven, big business operations with high degrees of waste.
U.S. factory trawlers catch and waste many fish species that coastal communities rely on for revenue. Traditional fishermen often watch these trawlers in anger as they kill fish that could feed their families, send their kids to college, help them survive.
At the rate they're going, they're destroying our sustainable fishery that we've worked hard to keep around. We've all made sacrifices in this town, and every other coastal community has as well, and just because they have big boats and a lot of money doesn't make it right that they get it all.
What used to be a nice, tightly woven web of connection between the coastal communities and the fishermen is broken by the factory trawlers, because they have never had any intention of being a part of coastal communities.
Destructive factory trawlers are not only harming fish and fishermen, they also threaten marine creatures that rely on the same fish for their survival.
Factory trawlers are breaking the food chain.
Well, I think what's happening in the Bering Sea is very dramatic. We're seeing some 16 major species in a state of severe and sustained decline. All of these species are closely tied to our culture.
Stellar sea lions once thrived in the North Pacific. Now their numbers are sinking by more than 80% since the 1950s. This corresponds to increased fishing of Stellar's main prey, pollock. Stellar populations are sinking so low that the government now considers them threatened. In fact, Aleutian Island sea lions may soon be listed as endangered.
Well, you know, this whole thing is a big circle of feed out there, and the pollock are a pretty important part of it to a lot of other species.
Harbor seals, fur seals, and many seabirds have suffered steep declines. Populations of kittiwakes and some species of murres have fallen by as much as 90% in some areas. These are all warning signs of an ecosystem under stress.
But given the trends of what's happening out there in the Bering Sea, for example, where crab stocks are crashing, halibut stocks are going down, sea lions, harbor seals, fur seals, seabirds of all kinds, and fish stocks, chances are they're not going to be out there very long.
Greenpeace is challenging both the U.S. government and the fishing industry to stop overfishing and stop other destructive fishing practices. Management must err on the side of protecting the fish and our ecosystem as a whole.
In order to conserve and continue to have healthy fisheries in the North Pacific, I believe we need to outlaw factory trawling.
Greenpeace believes that the time for factory trawlers is over. We need to come up with a plan to phase out these boats, get them off the water.
Common sense tells us that factory trawling is not sustainable.
Greenpeace is calling for the U.S. to rid our waters of factory trawlers in favor of ecologically responsible fishing. Stopping factory trawling is a critical step in sustaining marine wildlife, coastal communities, and what's left of our fisheries for future generations.
The sea is in the final analysis, is our mother. And the creatures that swim in the sea, the whole food chain in the sea, we're all part of that. We're all part of that. And let's not go out there and say this is one more thing to industrialize. We don't have to catch fish the way we build automobiles or turn out microchips.